If it's been 3.5 hours since you last ate protein, and now you're starting to freak out, you are old school. If watching someone sit on a hammer machine for 5 minutes between sets playing with their phone pisses you off, you are definitely old school. OSBBC.com for the hardest training athletes.
I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body, and that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching the Tasty Pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions, diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, news, whatever's on your mind, it is all on the table. A lot going on right now on the RX Muscle channel. If you go to the channel right now, episodes of Heavy Muscle Radio, after hours from last night, Dave doing his reaction video on the big news, Dave, and that's where we'll start with the Arnold Classic. We also touched on Flex Lewis, who made his announcement, I believe, late last week about why he was not going to be competing at this upcoming Olympia. But speaking of the Olympia and the upcoming Arnold Classic, well, it was reported, I don't know if an official announcement has been made yet, but it's been reported that this 2021 Arnold Classic will, in fact, be a qualifier for the 2021 Mr. Olympia. Previously, it was a qualifier for the 2022 Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, what I found that was a little weird was that, I reached out to Bob Lorimer, who usually always texts me back pretty quickly, and he didn't confirm anything. And I haven't seen anything announced on the Arnold page. I mean, we're going on secondhand information that other people have been reporting on other sites. So, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I really don't even think it matters. I think it should be a qualifier for this year. It just makes sense. I don't know why. If there's if there was a show the weekend before the Olympia, it was a qualifier for the Olympia. If it happened a weekend after the Olympia, then it was a qualifier for the next year. So I don't know why they started doing this 1 month out type of, cutoff. I mean, I thought maybe they did it because they wanted to book flights more easily and have everything set up. But how many extra people really qualified that last week or two? Not many. I mean, so I don't know why they do that, but I'm glad if they do make the Arnold this year a qualifier for the Olympia. I think that's a great idea. Probably most of the people will be qualified. I mean, I think the only person in that list would be probably Roelly Winkler, right? I mean, I know Sergio's competing before that, so I'm sure he's not depending on the Arnold to qualify him, especially with that lineup there. So it would be like a Roelly Winkler qualifier, really, is what it would amount to. So. And we might see him before the Arnold anyway, but maybe
I was
now,
just going to ask it. If you think he's going to be competing before the Arnold Classic.
Well, maybe now he won't, but I would still be nervous because what if he doesn't qualify at the Arnold? What if he has an off show or something like that, and there's no other opportunity? So he couldn't compete last year. I mean, it would be really rolling the dice to bank on that one show, the biggest show, the second biggest show of the year. I think that would be a mistake on his part.
Well, it is going to up the stakes a little bit. It's going to up the entertainment aspect of it. And, of course, we're talking about September 25th. It is July 14th now. So before you know, we're going to be starting our coverage of the Arnold Classic, our road to the 2021 Arnold Classic. So a lot of exciting things on that front. And then 2 weeks later, it's going to be the 2021 Olympia. So it's going to be a lot of breakneck action between August, September, and October. Let's go to the questions. The first two questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. The first question, Dave, I'm on your pre-contest diet with little carbs before training, 30 grams, but I'm losing weight so fast and the competition still 4 months. What can I do? Increase carbs with another meal or take 1 day full on carbs with all meals with carbs?
You know, when I see a guy losing too fast or a woman losing too fast, what I usually start to do is throw a couple of cheat meals in there rather than start messing with the diet right away. Because sometimes people lose really quick in the beginning because their bodies get rid of junk weight very fast. So what I'll do is, like, rather than just do a once a week cheat meal, I might say, in other words, if someone sends me an update, say, hey, I lost 3 pounds from yesterday, I'm going to be like, tonight I want you to have a double quarter pounder with fries, and update me in the morning. If their weight stabilizes, then I know they're good for a couple days. If it doesn't stabilize, then I might do it again. If it still doesn't stabilize after that, then I know I either have to cut back their cardio or I need to increase their food intake at every meal because they're just not eating enough. Most of the time, the cheat meal will stall it a little bit and fill them up and get their body right. At some point, usually that massive weight drop stops. What I find is usually the first 2 to 3 weeks, you'll see big jumps in weight loss because they're losing. Because remember, when you deplete glycogen out of your muscle, water goes too. That's a lot of weight. You can lose. When I was 315 pounds, I think I went down to 285 in like 2 weeks. So think about it, it's 30 pounds I lost. Because the bigger you are, the more water you hold. That's just the way it goes. And at 315, I didn't look like I was holding a lot of fat. I was a little bloated though in the face, and my tissues were a little full. Once the glycogen came out of the muscles with the water, then obviously I dropped some weight. So I wouldn't panic right away, but I would definitely, if you need to throw those cheat meals in there to kind of, balance off your metabolism a little bit, there's nothing wrong with that.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. How large of a role do you think hormones play in fat storage?
I think they have a huge role. I mean, the perfect example, and Dr. Scott Conley loves to give this example. You have a person on a diet that's like isocaloric or iso maintenance, if you want to call it. In other words, whatever they're eating is being used to repair muscle and fuel their body, but they're not gaining or losing weight. And you give them prednisone because maybe they had some kind of autoimmune issue, chronic inflammatory type disease like Crohn's disease, and all of a sudden they start getting fat. And they might even lose some muscle. And think about it, they're doing nothing different. They're training the same, they're eating the same, they're just adding this hormone. Because certain hormones are what we call positive partitioning, nutrient partitioning agents, and some hormones are negative partitioning agents. And the negative partitioning agents make you gain fat. The positive partitioning agents will make you build muscle and use stored body fat as a fuel source. Anabolic steroids will do that. Catabolic steroids like prednisone are negative partitioning agents. They actually just make your body store fat because they raise blood sugar. So yes, hormones dictate a lot about what's going on. Obviously, if your thyroid hormone is off, that's a huge problem that a lot of people have because they're a little hypothyroid. Their metabolic processes are not moving at the right rate. It's almost like having a factory that doesn't have enough power for the factory. And because the factory can generate a tremendous amount of output, but if you don't have enough energy to run the factory, then it doesn't work. And the thyroid hormone is kind of like the thermostat there that will keep the factory running at ideal temperatures. So yes, hormones absolutely without a doubt will influence how you look.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not already following us, our handle is official_RxMuscle. If you're watching us for the first time on YouTube, hit the subscribe button below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our show segments or updates. We talked about the Arnold Classic coming up in September. We're going to be starting up our preview segments for the Arnold Classic, and then subsequently 2 weeks later for the Olympia. We talked about what's on this channel right now. We have on all the episodes of the After Hours podcast, Heavy Muscle Radio. And then a topic that we talked about on the After Hours podcast about the IFBB Bikini Pro, originally from Turkey, who is traveling from Dallas to Miami, I believe, for a photo shoot. And she got ejected from the flight attendant saying that her clothes are too, I guess, inappropriate. We just had her on the channel. She gave her side of the story. So that's right now, live right now on the channel. So again, if you haven't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button below. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. That helps. And as always, year round, we appreciate your support. Let's go to Joseph Lasher or Lachey. When some open class bodybuilders retire, you sometimes hear, quote, "I got too big and ruined my waistline." Couldn't those guys just have dieted and cut some of the drugs out of their waistline or to get their waistline back? What am I missing? So if you want to talk about, I guess, blowing out those lines and I guess what they could have done to avoid that.
I thought a lot about this too, because I ate a lot of food back in the day. But you know what? I'm almost of the belief that I don't necessarily know if the drugs and the food ruined their waistline as much as Father Time did and genetics. Because, in order to get that big, okay, I'm not going to use myself as an example because I wasn't a pro. Let's use Ronnie Coleman as an example. Ronnie was eating an enormous amount of food and training with enormously heavy weights. And his waistline was great. His body looked great, okay? And what people don't realize is that he won his first Olympia. He was in his early 30s. He wasn't young. So by the time he got toward the end of his reign, he was already in the 40s, And when you get to that, late 30s, 40s, things start to, you lose the elasticity of the fascia around your abdominal area, whether you eat a lot of food or whether you train really heavy or not, okay? Look at Flex Wheeler. He still has a really tiny waist. He always ate a lot of food and trained heavy. He was big. For his frame, he was huge. He was like 260 on stage. So toward the end of his career, and he turned pro at 218. So, and his waistline didn't look bad to me. So I think what happens is your genetic structure is your genetic structure. And as you get older, it deteriorates and breaks down a little bit, and you lose the elasticity of your skin. And the fascial sheath that surround the muscles stretch out. And I don't necessarily think it's a drug issue because I see when guys go off drugs, it kind of reverses. Like, I had a lot of problems with distension because I had a very short torso in my midsection, and my waist is small now, and my stomach's flat. So I reversed it somehow, and I don't have loose skin on my abdominal area. So I don't buy into that. I think it's just genetics at a certain level. Your body can only handle, I wouldn't say, my body, I don't have the tightness of the skin that I had when I was younger, and I don't have this, the kind of like that fresh looking muscle that you see on like a Nick Walker. But age is what ravages us, really. And some guys age better than others. Dexter did a pretty good job aging, although his midsection also wasn't what it was. Phil Heath wasn't, and I don't think Phil doesn't look like the kind of guy that was using a lot of performance-enhancing drugs. He wasn't a super heavy trainer. He wasn't an overeater. So what happened to his waist? He just got older, and that's what happens, I think. And so, I think people just they get carried away with the fact they want to blame something. Oh yeah, he was a good champion, but he ruined himself. No, the guy won fucking 7 Olympias. Ronnie won 8 Olympias. They obviously had a lot of time during that reign that they looked amazing. That's why people don't last forever. Bodybuilding is a very short-lived sport. You can only have that peak look to your body with a good quality muscle before you start tearing things and things start, lose elasticity in your skin and things just go wrong. I mean, that's just what happens, especially when you walk around at 300 pounds, all the time. It's a big strain on your body. So I think the answer to the question is that, I don't think that it's the drugs necessarily and the overeating and the food that did it as much as it is the person's genetics and old age.
Let's go to G. Morgado. Your opinion on taking Test E while on ketosis, your recommendation.
Yeah, I always say that, the diet and supplementation and training is very standard, okay? Whether you're a natural bodybuilder or you're an enhanced athlete, it's very important. I think sometimes the natural athletes have their diets down and their supplementation better because they can't depend on drugs. So they're really almost like OCD at researching what they need to eat and how they have to train properly. That's why a lot of those guys, when they do switch on to using PEDs, they make amazing, amazing gains because they have well-trained muscle, they know how to eat, they know how to supplement, and they know how to train. And that's something that a lot of people just take for granted, that's really important. So when you add an F8N or any kind of drugs into a regimen, whether you're on a ketogenic diet or you're on a non-ketogenic diet, all drugs do is make things work better. So to answer your question, adding, test an anthate or whatever he wants to add into his ketogenic diet, it's just going to make it work better. That's all.
Magnificent, marvelous Maria, if you had to go against Ronnie Coleman in the challenge round for any one pose, which pose would it be?
Side tricep. Gustavo Bedell showed that right off the bat. That was Ronnie's worst pose. That was Gustavo's best pose. I don't think it was my best pose, but it was a good pose. But I wouldn't want to go against Ronnie in any pose. That's how good Ronnie was. But yeah, that was Ronnie's worst pose. Everyone knew it. The funny thing was another really bad pose for Ronnie was the front lat spread, and it wasn't because it was a bad pose, because he had a huge lats and huge legs. He just didn't know how to hit the pose. He hit it like a most muscular, like he was like flexing into it. But his side tricep, I don't know why he had problems with it. I think Ronnie wasn't the greatest poser, and I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that he was so big, or the fact that maybe he just didn't have the mind-muscle connection. Because I'm sure he practiced, because Ronnie was a consummate professional. He just wasn't that good at hitting the mandatories. And I think it's hard to tell someone who's an 8-time Mr. Olympia you don't know how to hit the mandatory poses. I don't think anyone ever really worked with him to the degree of deconstructing what he was doing and then building him up again. Because I think a lot of his poses could have been better. But he knew the poses he was good at. He was so dominant at that it didn't even matter,
Tattoo by Tony, and I'm sure you're going to be talking about this over the course of the next 6 weeks or so. If Roelly comes in at his all-time best condition, do you think he could beat Ramy if he comes in with the same shape as last year?
I think if Kevin Levrone could get back to his best day ever, he could beat Big Ramy. I mean, it's a hypothetical situation you're asking. I don't know. I've been seeing pictures on Instagram of Roelly recently. He looks like he could win the Olympia right now. I don't know. I don't know if these are recent. He's crazy looking. I think the exciting thing about bodybuilding is that on any given day, anyone can beat anyone, because you never know who's going to show up in shape. Roelly has had a run of a couple bad shows, and I think because of that, people are kind of discounting him. But that's dangerous, because Roelly's got a lot of firepower in his arsenal. He's got more muscle than all these guys, higher, better density muscle, grainy, mature muscle that he's developed over 20 years. Ramy doesn't have that. So can he beat Ramy? He absolutely can beat Ramy, but Ramy has pretty good structure for a big, massive guy. And, Ramy's more impressive standing in a lineup. And Roelly seems to have trouble peaking from behind. So a problem Ramy had too. So if Roelly can pull it all together, he absolutely can win the Olympia. But you know what? To beat Mr. Olympia, you got to knock him off. And Ramy's a pretty big-looking guy. When you see Phil Heath up there, he's not that big. But Ramy's huge. If you're going to knock Ramy off, Ramy's going to have to be off a little bit, because they're not going to take the Olympia away from Ramy if he comes in better than he was last year.
Let's go to Alex Williamson. Lamb versus beef as a red meat source for bodybuilders.
It's interesting because I don't really have too much access to lamb, but I actually like it, if it's prepared properly. I was a big beef eater in the sense that I used to do, for a while I went through a period where I was eating a lot of filet mignon steaks. I had a guy, my butcher would chop them up into like half-pound pieces for me, and I would have like one a day or something like that back in the day just for the red meat component. Of course, I ate a lot of McDonald's too, which was just red meat. But I actually had I don't know if I guess lamb would be, the place where I usually would get lamb would be one of those Brazilian, meat places where they cut the stuff in front of you there. They come around to the tables and they slice it. That's the only place I really liked lamb, the way they cooked it, because it was kind of like fat-free. But lamb can be a little gamey too, and can be a little fatty. So I know a lot of people like that taste. I don't really like that gristly taste in my mouth. So for me, I would stick to beef. If I was competing today, and they didn't have this when I was young, I would go with grass-fed beef. I would just buy from them like massive amounts and load my freezer up with it, because grass-fed beef is actually good for you. It's got more omega-3 fats than salmon does, believe it or not. And I would go with grass-fed buffalo, or bison they call it today, and I would go for grass-fed beef, and I would probably have them chop it up into hamburger meat. That's the easiest to make. I mean, you can make that. You can make pounds and pounds of that, put it in some Tupperware containers, or break it up into like half-pound things, and just leave it in Tupperware in your refrigerator. When the day comes, in the morning, you get those Tupperware out, you warm them up. Or I like cold food. I would just mash those things up. I'd throw fresh, cooked minute rice in there, some soy sauce on there, maybe a handful of like nuts in there, or some macadamia nut oil, and that I'd have like 5 meals made in 10 minutes. And that's how I used to do it, stuff like that. That's how I would prepare my food. But I would definitely go with the grass-fed nowadays, even if I had to spend a little bit more money.
Let's go to Chris Robinson. If you want to answer this as far as when you were competing, post-competition career, or post-competition life, the most water you drank in a day or a week. So I don't know if you want to break it up just as far as pre-contest.
I was never a water loader. Like I know these people like that would do 3 gallons, of water a day, and then for like 2 days, and then they go down to 2 gallons and 1 gallon. I never measured water. First of all, I believe that if you drink too much water, number one, you can water down your electrolytes and you can cause cramping prematurely. Because when you drink that much water and your kidneys have to flush it out, which is, by the way, a big strain on your kidneys. So if you have high creatinine, you don't want to be drinking excessive amounts of water. But if you drink that much water, your body has to release some sodium with the water to get it out of the body. And so you can water down your electrolytes to the point where you're cramping. So I knew that was not the right thing to do. So I never really overdrank. I hate to admit it because but it's the truth. When I would diet, I would drink massive amounts of fluid because I was so hungry. But a lot of it was in the form of coffee, diet, sodas and stuff like that. Because I didn't want to cheat, and so I would drink a lot of that. I mean, I was literally in the bathroom every 10 minutes peeing. Personally, also, from what I've read recently, that I didn't really know this back in the day, if you drink too much at a meal, theoretically you can water down your digestive enzymes in your stomach too, which might make it harder, especially if you're eating a very high protein meal. So if I eat a meal, I'll sip whatever I'm drinking, whether it be a coffee or water or amino evolved. I'll sip that while I'm eating just to keep my mouth wet, but I don't really drink a lot of fluid. I'll drink it before the meal. I drink it after the meal, in between meals, but I don't drink massive amounts of fluid during the meals. When you train, that's probably when you want to drink most of your water, especially if you're dieting. But I wouldn't, like I said, there's no reason to overdrink.
Let's go to Bilal Hamide. Is there any difference between injectable clen as opposed to the pill form? What will be the advantage?
Yeah. I think they're absorbed pretty much the same. I don't think there's any problems with absorbing oral clenbuterol. So it's not like some drugs are hard to absorb orally. I think clenbuterol is pretty easy. So I don't think there's any need to do injectable clenbuterol. I've personally never used injectable clenbuterol. I've seen it, and you would think it would be very precise because you're putting exactly what you want into your body. But like I said, it's not that much available out there. The water, the clenbuterol that comes in the bottles that people make on these and sell on these peptide sites, that's not injectable. That's to be squirted in your mouth. It's just clenbuterol suspended in water. So you actually measure it, and then you just kind of squirt it in your mouth and you swallow it. Very few people that I've known have injectable clenbuterol. I noticed in Canada they have it a lot. I think they use it on the horses or some kind of animals up there. Because it seems to be more readily available in Canada. And they also have that, there's like a liquid suspension too of clenbuterol, like a real one that's made by a real veterinarian place that they give to the animals up there, the feed, which we don't have here in the United States. So like I said, I mean, it all works the same. As long as you know how to measure 20 micrograms, that's the dose you should be taking. Now, how many times a day you're taking it is dependent on what you're up to and who's coaching you and how you administer. But clenbuterol should always be taken in 20 microgram dosages.
Let's go to Low Tay. Sumo deadlift versus regular deadlift. I have a long torso and regular deadlifts don't feel right, but sumo feels better. How different are the two from one another?
The sumo deadlift, where you kind of stand and you're pointing your toes out. You can't really see my feet. And you're really wide and you're pulling. I like wide stance, but I think sumo is almost too much. And so I like to keep toes pointing forward, and I like to go a little wider than shoulder width. So it's still wide, and then I can grab the bar inside rather than going outside. And I think you're stronger like this. And when I come down, I pull this way, and I'm driving from my hips, my glutes, my adductors, which is what you want to hit with deadlifts. I think when you're too close, you're almost like you're leaning over so much that you're using your lower back too much, and I think it could actually cause injuries. It really puts that lower back, those spinal erectors, in a very compromised position. And I don't think it's giving the deadlifts. You're not really building quads on deadlifts, okay? You're building your glutes and outer sweep to your legs, a little bit of adductor, and you're also obviously working those traps and those lumbars, which run down the middle of your back, and you're thickening all that up. So it's a compound movement. You're not just working your back when you're doing deadlifts, and you're not just working your legs. You're working your whole body. That's why it's such a good mass builder, because like squats, which you have to kind of balance the bar and the weight, you're building mass on your entire body. It's one of those. That's why when you're trying to grow and develop density and thickness from side to side, those movements are imperative. You cannot replace those with machines. People show me these squat machines. There's no way you're getting the same thing out of that. They have like a deadlift machine too. You can kind of, it almost looks like a shrug machine, but it's, you grab the weight on the ground. And it's good if you have injuries when you're coming back for them, but I wouldn't be doing that on a regular basis.
We'll take this question, and then we have a couple of fairly deep philosophical ones. Sicilian 83, why, if you want to kind of go through the mechanics of science of it, why is the body so primed after a show to grow?
Well, because you're essentially starving it, even though you're eating 6 times a day. You're essentially starving it because you're under eating what the body needs. So the body is in this conservation mode of trying to hoard everything because you're starving it and pushing it and getting rid of every little bit. So when the body wants to store, and I'm not talking about storing fat. I'm talking about storing glycogen, storing muscle, protein in the muscle as muscle. It's actually in a complete hoarding mode. Now, after the show's over, you put back a tremendous amount of nutrients, okay? And this is the key. You want to put back good quality nutrients that your body can use to build and repair muscle. If you just eat sugar after a show, you're just going to get bloated, okay? But if you give your body a lot of big meals with high protein, good essential fatty acids in there, high quality carbs to load glycogen, you're going to grow because all that's going to go into the muscle, and the muscle is going to say, we better store this all and build extra muscle because we don't know when we're going to be fed again, because the body's in this like starvation mode. Everything, the androgen receptors are super receptive. Everything's ready to go. And you'll see, you'll put on muscle right after a show. I mean, and the harder you dieted and the leaner you got, the better your rebound will be. And you don't have to even be, this is another question I get. Should I stay on like a cycle for another 8 weeks after a show? And my answer always is, and I've tried it both ways, no, because I'll tell you why. First of all, if you're doing a big show and you're on a good amount of gear, that gear isn't leaving your system so quickly. You're going to have that in your body for 3 to 4 weeks, probably close to the 4 weeks post show. So you got plenty of drugs in your system. When you stop taking all those anabolics and you go to like a PCT while your body still is depleting all those anabolics out of your body, your appetite is going to go through the roof and you're going to feel good and your body's systems are going to work efficiently because now you're not pumping a lot of drugs into you, which is creating toxicity. Remember, when your body is working to detoxify and break down anabolic steroids and everything else you're taking, that takes away a priority to building muscle because your body doesn't more. Building muscle is the last priority for your body. However, if everything else is being taken care of and there's no toxicity in the body, no toxic load, your appetite's going to be great and you're going to grow great. And that's what I noticed. I'd go off the drugs. I'd feel so good. My body was so clean. But meanwhile, I still have all this drug in my system. I'm just not adding, more on top of it. And I get a good 4-week rebound of growth. And in that 4 weeks, you could put almost 10 pounds of muscle on. Maybe, so I've seen guys put more on. And then by the time you hit week 4, you're still on PCT. Now you're going to clean out. Now you're going to let your body do nothing for 4 weeks. Okay, so those receptors now see no testosterone, and there's no drug left in the system. And those receptors are going to like boost themselves through the roof. Those androgen receptors, because they're like, there's no drug, there's no testosterone, there's nothing. Maybe we don't have enough receptors. Make more receptors, make more receptors, make more receptors, make more receptors. And of course, after a while, after a couple weeks, your body catches on. By that time, though, now you're 8 weeks off after a show. You've been on no drugs. You've gained, 15, 20 pounds of scale weight. Maybe you've gained 7, 8 pounds of muscle. And now you're going back on, okay? And now, boom, you're gonna get another rebound as you go back on and all those drugs hit those receptors that are all renewed, and now you're gonna grow. So you're creating a rebound in a very precise manner. And I've experimented with all the different ways of doing it. Staying on cycle, and I'm telling you, you go off, you do your PCT a week after your last shot. That first 4 weeks you're off, you get that beautiful anabolic boost and weight gain and muscle gain. You clean out for 4 weeks. During that time, it's not that bad. It's only 4 weeks. Your receptors completely regenerate themselves. Your body cleans all the toxins out of your body. And then you go back on, you get a second rebound when you go back on and those drugs start working with all those receptors now that you have that you didn't have before. And boom, you grow again. You could put 20 pounds on, in the first 2 months or first 3 months after a show's over. And just by the first rebound and then the second boost when you go back on cycle. So that's what I recommend you do. Now, you don't have to listen to me. I'm just telling you, I've done it every way possible. This is the best way. And it's the best way for health, too, because you're cleaning yourself out, too.
So these two, I'm going to sort of package it into one because, this is going to be something that, you're going to want to just as far as, it's essentially going to be the same message that you're going to deliver. So the first one is from Booby Bobby Traplord, who I didn't know, obviously, we're just reading this now, but his mother recently passed away 2 months ago. He was very close with her. Says that everything has felt really lackluster since that point. Any life advice on how not to feel like total crap? And I mean, before we go to the next one, just, our warmest wishes to you and your family. Obviously, you've been a big contributor to RxMuscle and this show in particular. But that aside, and, breaks our heart to see that how close he was with his mother and for that to happen. So we send our deepest prayers to you and your family. The second one's from Ivan Banyanat. During your competitive career, did you have any days where you just felt like you lost a passion for the sport, when you felt like you were wasting your time? And if so, how did you deal with that?
I've said this before, and, I don't know if people listen. Maybe some people do, maybe some people don't. But first of all, I want to send my condolences out because there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to make you feel better about losing your mother, obviously. But I will tell you this, that time does heal all wounds, and eventually the pain will subside. Sometimes it's good. I don't know if it's good. I dealt with a lot of emotional pain in my life whenever I had by dieting. Believe it. I know it sounds ridiculous, but when you're on a contest diet, you don't care about anything. All you care about is food. And it almost numbs you. And I don't know if that's good not to experience the emotions that you're feeling, but that's how I got through it, unfortunately. And I don't, sometimes if the grief is so severe, I recommend that people go talk to a counselor, because that sometimes they can walk you through that and you can kind of release your grief while you're with them rather than take it out on the people that you're friends with and loved ones in a negative fashion. Okay, that's another way. But what I recommend people to always do is have not just one thing that you love to do, but more than one thing. 2 or 3 things. I always have 3 things going at the same time. I have bodybuilding. I have my love of breeding animals and reptiles and snakes and all that stuff I'm doing now. And of course I have my kids. That's my 3rd thing. So no matter what's going on, if I'm having a bad day with bodybuilding or something like that, something's going wrong, I'll go downstairs and I'll start cleaning snake tubs. Sometimes I have a bad, the snake season's not going good. I'm not getting the reproduction I want. Maybe I have a couple sick snakes, and it's, I'm just like, I don't even want to go down there. I'm kind of sick of the whole thing. I'll go and I'll play with my kids, and they'll pull me out of it because they're always in a good mood, I'll come in here in the studio, I'll pull some markers out, I'll start drawing or doing some art or something like that and doodling. You got to find something that kind of gives you pleasure, and sometimes you have to walk away from the thing that you love most. Now, all of us here, the thing we have in common is that we love bodybuilding, right? I mean, we love training, we love competing and getting bigger and getting lean. And sometimes you look in the mirror and you're like, I look like fucking shit. What am I doing in this sport? Wasting all my money on drugs and supplements and food and wasting all my time. I look terrible. You know what? I guarantee you wake up tomorrow morning, you're gonna completely look different again. If you're having one of those days, don't look in the mirror, put a sweatshirt on and go do something else. That's the best thing I can recommend. If you're having a tough time because you've lost a family member or a girlfriend or boyfriend broke up with you, then do something different that gives you pleasure. Okay, take yourself out of that thought process. Because if you dwell on the negative, you get more of the negative. And we get what we think about whether we want it or not. Unfortunately, that's the law of attraction. That's how our universe works. So think about what you do want. Okay, think about that. Even if you don't have it, even if you think about what you want, fantasize, close your eyes, lay on the couch, imagine yourself winning the lottery, and what you would do with the money. It doesn't even matter if it ever manifests or happens or not. It doesn't matter. Think about it. Think about the feelings, the way you feel when you're doing it. Think about what it would be like to be on the Mr. Olympia stage, posing down against, all the top bodybuilders, Big Ramy and William Bonac and Roelly Winkler. Even if there might not be any reality to that, think about that, because that will make you attract anything and everything that will help you be the best bodybuilder that you can be, even if you never get to that level. Okay? My goal in life was always, my goal in bodybuilding when I got involved was to be able to make a living for myself doing this, where I wouldn't have to go work a job at a law office or, as a medical, whatever, doctor or whatever. I was in medical school for a while. I didn't want to have to work. I wanted to be my own boss, so to speak. I didn't mind working for someone else who's going to pay me to work out or do something related to that. And that's all I thought about. I was consumed with it. And I thought that in order to achieve that, I had to become a pro bodybuilder. And I realized at some point that it didn't even matter if I got a pro card or not, because I was already making a living. I was doing exactly what I wanted. I never had these fantasies of being, walking on stage as Mr. Olympia. I just thought that it was necessary to get to that level to make a good living doing what I like to do every day. But that's not the case. So think about what you want, even when you're in a bad situation, emotionally or mentally, psychologically. And I promise you, you will pull out of it. And I promise you, when you wake up the next morning, sometimes I just go to bed early because I'm like, I can't think about this anymore. I turn my phone off, I put it aside, I say, I'm not looking at another social media page, I'm going to sleep. And I wake up in the morning completely refreshed and I feel much better. So give it a shot.
On that note, that is going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder right now on the channel, all new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio, of the After Hours podcast. Dave having Denise Sapinar, the IFBB Bikini Pro, who's kicked off her flight earlier this week. We had the interview earlier today, so check all that out. If you haven't already subscribed, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. For Tyler Shore and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. See you next time.